Okay, we might get everything underway. So thank you everyone for joining us here at the Delv webinar today with Hypergate. I'd like to welcome you all. It's the Save Time, Improve Experience and Enhance Security webinar. So I'm Eloise Booth, the Product and Partner Manager here at Delv, and joining me today is Arman Sami from Hypergate, and he's the Account Manager there.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. So today, a large portion of our time at work is spent on repetitive, admin-intensive and reporting elements. And at Delv, we like to flip that traditional approach to technology and provide solutions that eliminate the mundane, repetitive parts and allow your people to focus on what they do best, the human interaction, being creative and problem solving. This ensures that your employees have a seamless, positive experience with technology and helps businesses reduce costs and at the same time, improving productivity. Today, we'll be presenting a capability with our partner Hypergate, which falls under our Managed User Experience Service, which we call Muse. Our Muse solution focuses on all of our core day-to-day user technology, combining elements of security, interactivity, connectivity, technology, service and support to ensure that your users have a holistic solution to help them get their job done in the moment, anytime. The most significant friction point we see in enabling mobile technology is security. You can improve your employees' user experience and productivity by providing the latest mobile devices and a flexible remote style workplace. However, even after doing all of that, employees are heavily reliant on their mobile phones to work, and will find that security logins and password resets will always be their biggest roadblock in getting their job done. And that's why we've teamed up with Hypergate to present you today a mobile solution that improves user experience and productivity by alleviating this issue around security and logins. And I'll now pass over to Arman to talk in more depth around their solution. Thanks, Arman.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. And yes, as mentioned, I'm here from Hypergate. I apologize. You'll see me in a while with my camera on, but it's kind of early here. So we are, as a company, completely based out of Switzerland. The product is developed and supported there as well. And this is why we really leverage and are very proud of our partners like Delv, who help bring our products to market all around the world. Hypergate is actually a product of a company called Papers, and again, a Swiss company that just owns quite a branch of different solutions. We've been around since 2010, and we strive at building mobile-first solutions. Our vision at Hypergate specifically is that you're going to be able to one day, hopefully in the near future, if not already, use your mobile devices as your workstation, as everything that you need to get work done. There will be a day when you no longer need to have your phone, your tablet, your computer. You'll be able to do all of this with one device. And of course, this one device then needs to be the pinnacle of security. You have to make sure that however your passwords are being entered, there's a secure, maybe multi-user or multi-factor authentication is being used. And all of this ties well into what device manufacturers like Apple and Samsung, all these different vendors, are envisioning mobile devices to be used in the future. This is clear and quite evident with the addition of iPad OS or Android as a desktop solutions with Samsung DeX as an example. Keeping that in mind, what Hypergate is specifically doing is looking to take all these different features or functions which you had and are quite used to on your laptop and PC, and making sure that those are all available on Android and iOS devices as well. So am I able to perform single sign-on? If my password expires, can I change it? Or if I forgot it, can I reset it? Am I able to use certificates for authentication? And is multi-factor certification something that I can take advantage of? Can I use a smart card? Can I use a fingerprint or a facial scan? And what we're striving and trying to do is to realistically merge these two ideas of what's available and possible on a laptop and what can you do now on a phone and a tablet. And that brings us to Hypergate Authenticator, which is, in short, going to talk about that last slide and everything you can do there. Now, Hypergate is a Android and an iOS solution. We're going to be talking about both through the slide goes on, but I would like to ask the attendees quick a poll. What devices do you predominantly use in your ecosystem? Are you more iOS or Android users? I'm sorry, everybody, but I don't see the poll coming up. You.
We can see the poll on this side, so I think that's all okay. So yeah, if everybody wants to complete the poll, that would be helpful. And then we can keep on going.
Fantastic. Or would you like to read the results quickly? I'm sorry, I don't see them on my end.
Let me just grab the results. Okay. So iOS looks like it's a winner.
Fantastic. I'm not a surprise by any means, but always good to check. And with this information, I'll focus a little bit more on the iOS side of things as well, because I think it'll make it a little bit more relevant and hopefully more interesting. Now, the Authenticator solution, which is going to be the topic now for quite a few slides, is again a single sign-on solution in its core. It does quite a few other things we're going to talk about as well here, but what it's really was first designed to do was to be a Kerberos agent for iOS. Now, many of you are probably thinking to yourselves, well, why do I need a Kerberos agent for iOS? It's built into the operating system. And that's very true. Many users can get by with just what's fundamentally available on iOS. What we've done is built let's say, a slightly more versatile version of the solution. So we have quite a few customers globally, whether they're in the financial district verticals or let's say in defense or government, which have quite complex Active Directories. In many cases, they might have more than one domain. And configuring these and updating them is a little bit tricky with the native iOS. In some cases, even if the back Active Directory is too complex, it might not work well. So Hypergate for starters fits really well in here and kind of provides this, let's say, larger scope solution to a larger variety of use cases and customers. Now, this is only, of course, PSA. What we also look to do is provide enhanced functionalities, password resets, notifications, and things we'll talk about in a little bit. But of course, one of the things to touch on even before we get into that is just why single sign-on. I hope everyone's already using it, but for those who aren't, something to consider is that, and I apologize, these are all polls taken from the US, but your employees are spending upwards of 10 minutes a week with their passwords. This is just them typing it in. This is for every app that they're looking to use, even if some of them are cached, which you hope they're not. On a global level, this is taking employees over 10 minutes. Now, what happens when employees have to type in passwords or maybe have multiple usernames and multiple passwords? well, they tend to start using the same ones, or very weak or short, just the bare minimum, maybe changing just a letter or a number or two. And this is a huge threat. This is, well, let's say this threat equals up to 80% of hacks or breaches. Um, so it can add up to be quite a dangerous for the environment, for the company, but also in general terms is something that can be very easily avoided. Now, there is quite a few other aspects of Hypergate, so I want to kind of focus on a little bit here. Again, the single sign-on, the knife of the Swiss Army portion is the topic we just covered. And we're going to talk about smart access, the conditional access piece, and password management portion as well. But I'd also like to quickly ask for a little bit more interaction and see how often are you using your phone? So there's a poll for you in a moment, but how much do you rely on your phones to get work done, whether it's accessing files, different applications? And I know that I think the poll says phones, but let's throw tablets in there as well too. How often are you using your phones and tablets for work?
The results of that poll, Arman, is very often was the highest response, which was 57%, and the next was not often, which was 29%.
Oh, good to know. And this is, in my experience, sorry, I haven't told you a lot about myself, but I've been in mobility for, well, almost a decade now. This is quite common, and depending on the vertical you're in and let's say the restrictions that you might have, maybe using mobile devices is something that you just simply can't do, or a liability you can't accept. And for others which have been able to adopt it, there's been quite a trend in users wanting to, or employees wanting to use their phones and tablets more. And we're even seeing quite a change or a shift in different parts of the world, in banking and financial industries, where people are now picking up a tablet and using that for almost everything. So we'll talk about use cases in a bit, but I'm not surprised to hear that. And thank you for the engagement. So with this, we're going to transition and talk a little bit to the password portion, because the more and more you're using your phones, and let's say you already have a single sign-on experience, what happens when a password expires? As we know, your password was probably set to expire every 30, 60, or 90 days. And if this experience, or if this, let's say, resetting of passwords is a hassle, it can potentially lead to more and more IT or support desk tickets, or even just downtime of employees. So it can be quite, let's say, burdensome. So last poll for everybody, what happens when your passwords do expire?
Okay, so the results in, and a 100% response rate of user is notified and prompted to update their password.
Fantastic. And that's honestly the best answer you can ever hope for. And it's nice to see that everybody has put in this time and effort to find a solution that works here. You will find almost around the world, usually I find quite a variety of these different settings, or these available options. In many cases as well, it's nothing happens on an iPad or iOS. So I'm quite proud to see that everyone's actually taken a step forward and been proactive about this, because it can be quite burdensome, and it can lead to a lot of end user frustration as well. When nothing happens and nothing works, well, what happened? Did I get fired? Did the company go down? Why can't I access my email? Why can't I check and see what my daily tasks or objectives are? So that's fantastic. This is definitely what we're always striving for. We want you to be prompted. We want you to know that your password has expired, and we want to provide you a very straightforward and easy way to reset that. And Hypergate does that. You'll see it in the demo eventually. But the other aspect of single sign-on and using passwords is also the possibility of getting rid of passwords altogether. And of course, if you have no passwords, this ultimately means that you are a lot safer against phishing attacks. Over the last, and I'm sure COVID is still a very popular topic that we've all probably heard too much about, but over the last year or so, phishing attacks, or let's say 2 years now, phishing attacks have been on the rise. I know personally, I get these emails at least monthly, telling me that my boss has asked me for to log in or to do something. They even say his name, or even just that I've won something and all I have to do is log in to an account I never owned or had. But the ability or the possibility, let's say, to get rid of passwords altogether can be quite beneficial to your company. And I imagine that almost everybody who's on this call is already using certificates to some extent or another. And this is amazing because I think ultimately the user experience is much improved. You just pick up your phone, your tablets, and you're able to work. You're not worried about typing anything in on what could possibly be a small screen if you don't have a attached or Bluetooth keyboard. Now, with this, we're going to move into the final aspect of Hypergate, and I'm actually going to get to show you a little bit about what it is and what some use cases around it and what is the user experience like. Now, smart access, as I'm going to get into, is quite let's call it a robust bit of the solution. It's a conditional access module, essentially. And it works a little bit different than, let's say, your traditional conditional access tool. Of course, you're able to configure different data by, let's say, geofence, time fencing, or network bases. But these are some examples. You're able to do a lot more as well. For instance, on different devices, you're able to read different device states and figure out, okay, is this device being used or not? And then, based on this information, we're able to do things, for instance, requiring a user to provide a multi-factor authentication. Is it a fingerprint? Is it a facial scan? Is it an NFC badge that you're going to scan on the back? And likewise, we can request or block network requests and access. So, hey, you're on a network which isn't deemed a secure network. You're at Starbucks and trying to work. Sorry, no can do. You can't have access to this application specifically or all your applications. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do with smart access. Now, what makes it quite unique and interesting is the fact that all of this is locally managed on the device. So we haven't talked yet about how you're going to configure and deploy Hypergate, but spoiler, it's all done through your MDM. And this means that these rules, once you've created them and designed them, will just be input into your managed app config. And once there, this engine is always rolling on the device. What does this mean? If I turn on airplane mode, or if I don't have connectivity, these rules, as long as you're still getting GPS, if that's your tool, or let's say you have no connectivity, then you're always asking for multi-factor authentication. These are tools which will always be running in the background. And you never have to worry that, okay, this might be ways or tricks around it, versus many conditional access tools out there are all cloud-based. And again, no connection, no way for these rules to be checked. Maybe access is just denied, and that might be enough. But let's say you have a working environment where this happens frequently, or you have users that are maybe in logistics or traveling around a lot, and there's some dead spots where they still might need to use different things on their phone. Having these rules locally fixed and on the device provides quite a bit of first ease of mind. It's there, it's going to work, regardless of the situation, but still usability in these cases where users need it. Some use cases that we see quite often is I'm traveling around the world. Let's say, I guess nowadays even more challenging, but when the Hypergate's smart access feature was first developed, it was for bankers in Switzerland, which were traveling to either China or the US. And of course, these countries have, let's say, very strict TSA or security rules when you enter the country. And in the US, for example, your phone can actually be seized and searched. Now, with Hypergate, what we're able to do is saying, okay, I'm leaving the country, I'm going to another one, and even if there's no connectivity, my GPS signal is still being read. I know that this device is out of the country or in another country, which is could be potentially a violation of or could access this data. That's fine, not a problem. We're going to block all access for 5 hours or block all access completely. Maybe the person goes on vacation and they shouldn't access this anyway. But of course, being able to build in these geo rules are quite helpful. The second is, are your employees working within regular hours or outside of regular hours? In different industries and around the world, some people are very worried about their employees getting overtime or working too long or accessing data at times which, let's say, might not make sense. Hey, Armand, why are you looking at company data at 2 in the morning? This seems kind of fraudulent. Or did you lose your phone and somebody else is going through it and you only have a certificate and a weak screen password so they could access it? But whatever the reason, you're able to, again, provide these rules, require multi-factor, block access, do a whole variety of different things based on time of day even. And finally, a use case that we're seeing more and more of recently is, do you have or are you using at all shared devices? This is usually in a warehouse, or let's say you walk in at the beginning of your shift and you pick up an iPad for the banking office, and you just pick up a tablet. It doesn't quite matter which one. You don't have one specifically delegated to you. There's 10, and you pick one up and you use it for the day. Well, Hypergate allows you to use these devices with shared environment. So you're logging in or you're using your smart card, and the device then knows it's you. Every application you access knows it's you, and you're automatically, very quickly and seamlessly logged into them. Now, this is piece, let's say A, logging in. But in a shared device, factor B, piece B, that you should be aware of is how are your users being logged out. Armand, he starts his shift, he goes and takes a break, or it's my lunch, and I take my tablet and I leave it on the desk. And then somebody else comes, picks up that tablet and continues to work. They don't check to see that I'm logged in or that it's just not them logged in. And they continue to work their entire shift. Now, this entire time, calculating data, making changes, all under my name. And of course, this is something that Smart Access can help you with, either by integrating different tools to be able to, let's say, clock people out or send a kind of reset the apps, or B, just doing different things like device states, in some cases, device screen time off, or just let's say, hey, I know that everyone takes their lunch 4 hours after they start, so require a second authentication after 4 hours, even though their ticket is still valid. So a lot of flexibility. These are just some use cases and some aspects of how you can use our conditional access. But of course, you can mix and match all of these things together to come up with a very secure user experience, but also one that's even, let's say, heightened security in cases where you need a little bit more. So we talked about in general, and I know that many of you are iOS users, but have you considered Android, and has Android not worked for you? Because as I'm sure almost everybody here is aware, you're having to or must in the very, very near future transition to Android Enterprise. And if you haven't already, you're going to learn that the Active Directory Kerberos authentication with Android Enterprise means, or shouldn't say means, it is no longer supported. So you had it on your legacy devices, you've updated them, or maybe just started to use Android Enterprise and realized that now Android devices don't work like your iOS devices. Well, what's now? You have some users which maybe A, can't log into any applications or tools, or B, or as the picture here depicts, typing in their username and password each and every time. So Hypergate is a very easy, you'll see it in a moment, but a quick plug and play solution to help you just to get those handful of Android devices, if any, or if some users are BYOD and really love Android and this is their operating system, they want to bring those devices for work. Hypergate is a very straightforward and easy solution to help level that playing field and say, hey, iOS devices can do this. This is why we allow them. This is why we manage them. Okay, well, now we can help support your Android devices as well. And of course, it's done and you'll see it in a moment, but the exact same way as on iOS. So there's no back-end components. It's quite seamless. It leverages the infrastructure that you already have in place. So identical to your PCs, laptops, and iOS devices. And it is a very easy to configure application also through your MDM like iOS. In many cases, it's actually just will be a very quick copy paste of that same information, but you'll see that in a moment. To summarize Hypergate, and we haven't quite talked about apps yet, but you'll see some working in a moment, helps build in this entire ecosystem. And we fit almost, as we like to think of ourselves, in the middle. We are bringing the connectivity of the Active Directory with the different applications that you have federated or proxied to it, and of course making this available on all of your different operating systems, and of course working cross UEMs. So let's say, for instance, you have multiple UEMs in your environment or in your company. That doesn't matter. Hypergate is, again, just an app which can be configured through the Play Store, and it becomes, or the Apple's App Store, which makes it very quick and very easy. And the exact, well, to a large extent, the configuration of Hypergate is the same within every instance. So if you know how to configure and manage this once, it doesn't matter what MDM you're using. The rest of it is quite the same, relatively seamless. For those technical viewers, just to give you a quick, let's say, explanation of what Hypergate is doing in the background. You see Chrome here, but it's the same if it's iOS and if that was Safari. But a simple kind of a quick breakdown of the of kind of what happens when you access an application and where does Hypergate fit into this. Now, this is a cartooned version. If you're ever looking for a more, let's say, technical diagram, we have some. I'd be very happy to provide them for you. Please ask. But the user experience that you normally see is an employee starts their shift at the beginning of their day and picks up their phone, tablet, and accesses an app. In this case, it's Chrome and it's a web application. And through their VPN, or let's say they're on the network already, they're accessing their intranet and that application. Now, of course, that application is not just going to give anybody who finds the URL or opens and installs the app access to this data. They're going to ask that user to authenticate themselves, to prove that they should have access and to explain what should they have access to. Now, this is where Hypergate gets inserted. Hypergates will be programmed in both operating systems to delegate or to manage and to handle authentication requests from whitelisted applications. This means that you can't just install any application and Hypergate will authenticate it. No, that's not how it's going to work. You're going to program those applications to authenticate with Hypergate and Hypergate to accept and to authenticate these applications. Now, once you've done that, and let's say Chrome and Hypergate are already configured, Hypergate will then take this authentication challenge, the token, and verify that with your Active Directory or your key distribution center, your KDC for those Kerberos folks in attendance. And once we're able to provide the entire Kerberos authentication in the background, we will then take that token and provide it to the application. Now, I'm sure I'm already, or a few of you are thinking, well, hey, we don't use Kerberos, we use SAML or FIDO, different types of authentication. This is not a problem. How Hypergate interacts with your Active Directory is through Kerberos, but how Hypergate interacts with your applications and for authentication, it can be any of the modern day authentication mechanisms or protocols. So don't worry about it. Regardless of what your app is and how you're authenticating, try out Hypergate for the mainstream applications and kind of, let's say, protocols. It will definitely work. We also have this information listed as well, but won't go into too much detail here today. I mentioned earlier that a popular use case that we see, and of course a popular vertical for us, is banking and financial. But Jeffries is a great example. This is a case study that we've actually done with Google and I believe Mobile Iron to help Jeffries is a financial institution within the US and I think globally, but to help them help their mobile employees, specifically their BYOD employees, which are bringing Android devices to work, authenticate to Kerberos and have access to corporate information, just like their other colleagues and users on iOS. So same use case, same kind of solution, Hypergate Authenticator. They're actually a great, well, the case study here won't say it probably needs to get updated, but a great use case of somebody who first came into device changing. Android is going to Android Enterprise. Users still want to use Android. They're not looking to move to iOS, and we need to be able to support them so they can get some work done on their devices. Fine, that's great. Let's just use Hypergate Authenticator, basic, and then recognized passwords don't work the way that they, or expiry doesn't work the way that they wanted to. They weren't as quiet at that time. Let's say updated as everybody here, which has a way of notifying and resetting their applications. They didn't. And finally, so they started to use this. And finally, now they're looking at using smart access as well to add that second layer of protection, because they're realizing that, hey, users are using their phones and tablets more and more, and they want to be able to support them. Now, of course, this is just one case study. You can see others on our website. Other verticals which are quite popular are legal, defense, finance, gov, and pharma. You might see a trend here, highly regulated, dealing with, let's say, very secure or confidential data and information. And of course, this means that Hypergate will be a fairly good fit for you because, as the diagram above showed, Hypergate is not speaking to any cloud service. We're not communicating with a portal or anything which is not on the device or within your in your intranet behind your firewall. And this makes our communication A, secure, and B, simple. There's not a lot of new ports you have to change or open. We're quite plug, play, and in many cases, just forget. So quickly, why use Hypergate? If your user experience is not what we've talked about kind of before, you're typing in multiple passwords, usernames and passwords, they're being reset often, and you don't have a way to reset them, Hypergate is quite helpful here. And of course, reduced downtimes with logins, less breaches and IT support desk tickets. And finally, of course, security and flexibility. Flexible to use any device, any operating system on a BYOD or a company-owned device, on a shared device or a dedicated device. And of course, I'll leave security for last. In your infrastructure, the way you already have it set up, you're plugging us in and we're communicating one-to-one. Um, Everything is handled on the app, on the device, or behind your firewall. And again, there's no backend components you're installing. There's no changes which are required. You're configuring us through your MDM, installing us on the device, and that's it. This is one of my favorite slides. Up until now, I imagine it's getting quite boring. You're hearing me talk now for over 30 minutes, and I think probably I hope what you heard sounds good, sounds interesting, but now let me show you a little bit of it working. So if there's any difficulty, or let's say cutting in and out, I'm sorry, I called you all on a tablet so I could very easily show you this experience. Without doing an emulator, but showing you kind of a real example of how you can use Hypergate on a device. In this case, it's a BYOD device. So I have at the bottom, you might see here a personal and a work partition. Now, this is because I'm using Android, but everything to be showing you is the same on iOS. So the user experience, what to expect, how it works, and even what it looks like is identical. So when launching Hypergate or our application, this is kind of the information that a user might see. Now, this is not the user experience that they'll actually go through. I'll show you that in a moment, but just to familiarize our application with you. It's quite straightforward. You have the little sandwich up on the top left. I'll show you quite a bit of information. Now, this is all configurable. You can hide or show this information. For instance, the troubleshooting tools for network and certificates are mainly for the IT team's access. But I just wanted to show you their possibilities. If you go to settings, this is essentially what the user will be typing in and using on their, or sorry, I shouldn't say user, the MDM admin, the UEM admin, mobility admin will be entering for Hypergate to be able to access and also to configure it a little bit, but for the application to work. In the sandbox, you'll notice that at the very top here, I have a username actually typed in. Again, I'm sorry, this is just our sandbox. Realistically, in many MDMs, you're going to be putting in a value there, or in many cases, it's like $, username, $, or every MDM uses a little bit different, but a wildcard value to be able to pull whatever information is being saved on the MDM, or whatever the user is on the MDM side. You'll configure if certificates are being enabled or not, checkboxes, if you're looking to allow the passwords to be changed on the device, if you're using them. And then down here is where you're going to actually be configuring your Active Directory information, your default realms, where your KDC is located. And of course, realms, if you have multiple, if you have, let's say, fallbacks, or if there is some kind of throttling availability there, Hypergate will allow you to, hey, check this domain. Oops, it's not working, it's down or taking too long. All right, then go down the list and try these other ones. You'll also notice here that certificates have been configured in this configuration. So we are using certificates here. And again, some kind of settings, configurations. But down here is where you're going to see the whitelisting of both applications that Hypergate can access. These are here, for instance, comma separated. So in the discovery package names, you'll see I have quite a few applications listed here, including like Windows Intune, our file solution, Chrome websites, and a whole list of different apps. Now, down at the bottom here is where you have different permissions, and where I mentioned earlier, you're able to turn on and off different kind of things within the application itself to either simplify the user experience and the information they have, or if you want for troubleshooting, maybe to enable them. So the settings here, you might have noticed I've already made some clicks and made some changes. Of course, you can remove that so that end users cannot make these changes either to configurations or settings, or do they have access to view the settings? Should they be able to run the network or the certificate troubleshooter? Probably not in a real use case. And it's very easy to turn this on and off. From the MDM's perspective, of course, I'm showing this to you on the app, but through your managed app config, all these values are the same. The user experience of configuring them and enabling or disabling them is very straightforward. And I don't think for your MDM admins out there, I'm sure you're nodding your heads thinking, yeah, this is rudimentary. Now, two quick things you might have noticed here at the permissions at the top. This is the prompt for username and password. This is for the scenario where you're using multiple users and you want that user to be able to type in their username at the beginning of their shift once, and then once they're logged out completely or at the end of their shift, the new user to type in their information at the start of the next. The last one down here is the Smart Access Troubleshooter. You might notice that this is the only mention of Smart Access here. This is the only exception where the MDM has more configurations than the application. You will configure this information on the MDM and push it out, not on the device. But the troubleshooter, if enabled, will let you run the simulation and test to make sure that on the device side, whatever you've configured is actually working. Now we're back to the application. I type login, and you noticed here, again, this is an Android tablet. It prompts me for biometrics. So this is, in this scenario, my device. So I've already programmed my biometrics, and now it's asking me to type in my password. And once I do that, I'm logged in. You see a lot of greens start popping up. You're all set. For instance, here also up at the top, you might notice that I'm now in active status. I'm logged in. My ticket will expire in 10 hours. This is the ticket granting ticket from the Kerberos authentication from your Active Directory. And 10 hours is quite a big number. I'd say most of our users are kind of customers are taking the Active Directory default of about 8 hours or so, but this is all customizable and configurable. You'll also notice that we tell you when your password will expire, and in a sandbox, I hope no one in attendance's passwords will expire in 2037, but you'll see that correctly depicted there. So for users which maybe are worried that it might expire, or there's some use cases even where you have to reset it proactively, you can use Smart Access to notify the user and then take this information here to present it to them. Now, again, same on both operating systems. I'm just going to quickly show you the change password functionality. Very straightforward. You click either change password if you're doing it as a self-service on your own, but this will also get prompted at the beginning of your shift when you try to authenticate. So first, of course, you're going to type in your old password and then type in your new password. So as an example, I'm going to pick one that's, of course, too short. It's 2 letters. And of course, this is all depending. You don't configure your password requirements on the Hypergate side. You're configuring this on your Active Directory. So whatever you've configured for all of your other apps, for your PCs, laptops, this is all going to be the same in Hypergate. So now when I hit enter, it's going to tell us that we could not change the password. The password must contain at least 7 characters. Again, our sandbox is quite simple, but usually you'll be prompted to you'll be required or prompted to type in not only the username and the password, but also, or sorry, the password to have 7 characters, but you'll also be prompted to have a character, a special character, or numbers in there. You can also configure and match Hypergate password resets to different tools and services that maybe keep track of old passwords, or have you been pwned, where a public system where we track, and not we, but you can see which passwords have been, let's say, breached through a hack, or known to hackers out there, and we can cross-reference part of your password, your new password, with that password to make sure the passwords you're using are actually authentic and new. At the same time, if you have an internal solution that does this, or other tools that you're using to further enhance the requirements of passwords, this can all be integrated through Smart Access, and making that requirement set within the application for resetting your passwords as well. But then if you type in a password that is correct, I won't do it now, but you'll just save and update that password. Now, just to quickly show you kind of what the user experience looks like, I've canceled the password change. We could not change it. And I have at the top right, logged out. And you see now I have a red inactive status, and I'm logged out here. The user experience that most of our users see or interact with is they will launch the application that they're looking to use, and they'll go to the website at the beginning of their shift, or whatever other service they're looking to consume, whether it's a native application or any other app. And as you see, I go to Chrome in this case, and I go to the website. First thing I'm asked for is the fingerprint. And then second, because I'm logged out, I need to log in for the first experience. I need to type in my password. Hypergate this whole time just pops up on the top of the screen within a little kind of a little pop-up message, a little GUI. Same for both operating systems. And then I am logged in. Now, the applications I have to show you here are quite rudimentary, but just to give you an example of another one. This one is one that we use more for testing. What you're seeing here with all these green dots is a new Kerberos request. So if you want to crash your Active Directory, you can run this troubleshooter tool here to see how quickly you're able to authenticate, and is it failing at any point, or any of my servers going down. But this is a troubleshooting app that we open up. Now, this is just Chrome and these different applications, which are web-based, but of course you're able to use native applications too. For instance, this is one of our file solutions. Same, like this is a native app, but authentication is happening in the background with Hypergate. Once it loads, we'll be able to see on-premise applications, also Azure Files applications for those multi-storage or multi-file share customers and users. But you're able to now access here on-premise files and contents. But this is also being done through SMB and the same type of authentication. If you're using different applications, and let's say you have your own internally built applications, or you're using just kind of a Workday app or different kind of traditional apps, Android or iOS, not to worry. We have quite a list of different applications that we do support, but reach out to us or Delv, and we'll be able to tell you if the apps you're using or support authentication, if they support any type of authentication on mobile devices. And in many cases, we have how-to guides or can work with you to configure them and set them up. Whew, that was a lot of talking, and I'm sorry, everybody, I went a little bit over schedule, but that is kind of the Hypergate portion of it. I open this now back up to Delv for the final remarks and hopefully some Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you, Arman. So as you can see, Hypergate enhances security, reduces friction, obviously, and improves employee experience. So it fits perfectly within our Muse solution. Alrighty, so now it's time to open up to Q&A. So I think I can see some questions here. So maybe I'll just read them out to you, Arman. The first question is, how is Hypergate licensed?
Very good question, especially for the for a single sign-on solution at heart. I think we take a slightly different approach than what you might think is kind of traditional in the ping federate or Okta world. By the way, for IDPs, we do support them as well, so that's not a problem. We talked a lot about Active Directory, but if you're using another IDP, it doesn't matter for Hypergate as long as we can pull and access those users and their authentication. Not a problem. As I mentioned, sorry for the sidebar, but we do it differently. We're licensed as a per device license. So it doesn't matter if in a shared environment maybe, or in a user environment where it's one-to-one, you're only paying for the mobile devices that you are authenticating onto. So again, and this is mainly because our users on mobile are probably one-to-one, maybe one-to-two, but the other vendors are saying, hey, one user might have 5 devices. We're just focused on mobile. So it's a per device license. And it's also, I should say, either a yearly subscription or there's a perpetual option as well.
Okay. So another question here is, how does Hypergate handle or store biometrics?
That's a very good question. So this is one that is sometimes seen or viewed upon as well, either a breach of employees' rights, or how are you storing it? Is it secure? Can it be breached? Can my data be stolen? These are all very valid and great concerns. Because of these concerns, what we're doing on both operating systems is using the configuration which is within the Android or iOS operating system. In many cases, I think both and almost all vendors, this is stored on a specific hardware chip. And this is what we're interacting with on both. So in both environments, you'll actually save the biometrics within the settings of the operating systems, and Hypergate will then access them there. So our application does not actually store or save any biometric information or data. We're just accessing them on the device.
Okay. Hopefully that answered that question. Alrighty, so the next one is, do you support third-party applications like SAP?
Yes, great question. And this is one that I think we usually, as we kind of talk about setting up SSO, one of the things that we should always consider and talk about is, hey, what are the applications which I need SSO for? What mobile applications are my users actually using? And if SAP is one of them, this is a very common one for us. So yes, we do support SAP. We see quite a bit of use in SAP Fury, and I believe that's one of the guides we even have available on our website, so you can quickly check it out and see how that's configured. That's a great example for an app that, by the way, does not have a managed app config. To enable single sign-on for Android on SAP, it's done through their backend. So we have some documentation on how you can configure that to delegate to Hypergate for authentication. On iOS, however, it's much easier even. So through iOS's singular design for authentication, we're just kind of going through the iOS standard, which means almost every app works out of the box.
Excellent. And another question is, will Hypergate Authenticator work with macOS?
That is a great question, and unfortunately, no. So currently, it is a mobile device only. So iPad OS, iOS, and Android, and all the different variations in between. Okay. So no, unfortunately, no Mac OS support.
Excellent. And then the last question is, can the Auth app be branded?
Oh, that's a great question. We are open for it in many cases too. Your MDM can sometimes change the app icon, but if there is a use case where we're looking to have even a more flexible solution, you might have noticed the app is very simple. There's not a lot of wording in there, and not a lot to really tie it to Hypergate, and this is because we have branded it for other companies and organizations in the past. So you can choose the color scheme even in the background there. Sometimes even the text in some areas, but yeah, completely can be rebranded and designed for your organization.
Excellent. Okay. I think that's all the questions at the moment, and we are, I guess, running out of time. So we might just flick to the next slide, which I guess is just, I guess, let anyone know that if you're interested in finding out more information, we'd love to hear from you. So reach out to info@delv.com to get your free experience audit, where we can document the process of signing in and provide you with a report on just how much time and money you could save with this solution. So we'd love to hear from you. And also just a quick note to let you know that due to the Australian Post delays at the moment, those Swiss packs they're still on their way. They're moving, but just a bit slower than normal. So just keep an eye out for those coming soon. And we'd also just like to thank you all for coming today and taking the time out to join us. And in the essence of Are You OK Day, we hope you're all okay. Have a great afternoon, and thank you once again for joining us. And thanks so much for coming from all the way from Switzerland.
It's my pleasure. Hopefully I get to see you all in person soon one day.
Absolutely.